Salutations, everybody. It is Maddie here today. Hope you're all doing absolutely excellent, and thank you for your patience, because I believe this is the moment a lot of you have been waiting for. If the comment section, if the stream chats have been anything to go by, a lot of y'all are wondering if this next big Starfield update is fire. Maddie, what do you think of the free lane update? Maddie, what do you think of Terran Armada? I'm going to answer those questions here today. But first, a little backstory, because this was an unorthodox preview event that I attended, because I saw everything we're about to talk about today back last November. So I've been sitting on this information for a while. You may have noticed that, because myself and other creators were able to say we saw the future of Starfield, but we couldn't tell you anything else at all. This particularly got painful when the rumors about Starfield 2.0 started to crop up, and I was like, dude, it's not that at all. We'll talk about expectations in a moment, but when I started to see those rumors kind of get tossed around and no one could really stomp them out because we were all sitting on our hands, it started to become a bit of a problem. It wasn't until just last week that Bethesda invited us to another digital hands-off preview, and seemingly some hands-on previews as well, because I did see some other people were invited to visit Bethesda Game Studios in person and check out the latest on Starfield. But in my case, it was another digital hands-off preview. Again, Tim Lamb hosted this one, the producer for Starfield, and he walked through everything that's going on with the Free Lanes update, as well as the upcoming paid DLC in Terran Armada. So yeah, I've had like months to just sit on this information and develop my thoughts, and I want to start off with expectations. I think Bethesda has set these correctly. There were multiple quotes during this event that stood out to me, like Tim Lamb saying they're not trying to reinvent the game, but build upon what's there, or that they are looking to express themselves with this game, but not turn the game into something else. That was in a private setting. Okay, fine. But then you have Todd Howard in a public setting saying this is not Starfield 2.0. He wants to push back against that. And then even though all of this has been happening, like it's not Starfield 2.0, it's not Starfield 2.0, someone still asked during the live Q&A that we were able to do after our preview session if this was Starfield 2.0, and Tim Lamb, again, pushed back heavily. So yeah, if you see any YouTubers or press trying to frame this like it's Starfield 2.0, then I would consider that highly suspect, because they have made it explicitly clear that it isn't this on multiple occasions outside of and within this digital preview event. That said, I think even if you go in with reasonably set expectations and you've listened and heard all of that, that you could walk out of this potentially a little bit disappointed. Allow me to frame this for you. I sat down during this event for about an hour and a half. Much of what Tim Lamb emphasized here is that they were listening to the fans. And I think there's truth to this, because, for example, Starfield is getting new points of interest to explore in this update. Like, I saw it for myself in 2 instances, and the B-roll that was provided by Bethesda had a few more. The problem is that when we asked how many there were during a Q&A following the preview, he did refuse to give an answer on that, and it's tough to tell if these are new Radiant locations that the game will call on planets like all of the others, or if they're newly created locations like a traditional Elder Scrolls or Fallout dungeon, but we don't have clarity on that. And this was the case for a lot of the issues that I was personally hoping Starfield would address. He happily went into detail on new elements added to the Outpost system, or Starfield's newest loot grind that is mighty reminiscent of Fallout 76. We'll get into that. However, the Terran Armada DLC, the part that is paid for in all of this, was the thinnest point of the presentation. Like, I have my notes in front of me right now, and for Terran Armada, I counted, it was 5 bullet points. Whereas the rest of the Free Lanes update, I've got easily 10 times more than that. So that's the level of information we're talking about here, me just actively writing stuff down. They gave us very little on the thing you're paying for. Not only that, but some of the information they framed it within, like calling it a smaller story DLC, after we paid $30 for Shattered Space, that was also a small story. Like, we finished that in 4 to 6 hours. So when I asked a question during our live Q&A and got the answer that Terran Armada was $10, I was kind of sitting there like, okay, smaller DLC, $10. Is this going to be like an Automatron moment where this is like an hour-long story, but we get like some new systems out of it? So again, they went in on the stuff they had a lot of information on, but some of the things that I was hoping to learn more about didn't really give me the answers I was looking for. So I won't truly know how I feel about all of this update until I actually play it. But I figured, given I know my audience well, and I know the issues that you shared, there's a very strong possibility you walk out of all the info I'm going to share with you today with a similar feeling of like, that's cool and all, and like, they are trying, and this is new, and there is a lot happening in this update. This is stuff, and a lot of it. They have been working for a while, and I think you can feel that. But for those key pain points that you were maybe looking for a little bit more information on, it seems like we'll be waiting until April 7th when we can get our hands on the game. So that's the setup I wanted to have for this preview, just to fairly shape the expectations. That I think the way Bethesda talked about it was entirely accurate. I'm glad they stomped out Starfield 2.0 because it is not that. It is, in fact, a lot more of Starfield and all the Starfield things. But that even if you understand that there are still, I find, to be some disappointing elements in the information I'm going to provide. So ladies and gentlemen, let's get into it. Thank you for your patience. Let's talk some Starfield. If you're new here and you're into what's going on with Bethesda, consider subscribing. Let's start off with some pricing to frame things up here. All of these updates plus the PS5 version drop on April 7th. It'll be $50 for the standard version of the game. So base game Starfield across all platforms will now be $50. I think this is a great move. We saw Avowed do this, and I'm hoping that other Xbox games that get ported over to other platforms do this new reduced price, and I'm glad that it's even across all those platforms. Then there's the premium version. So $70. The original base price now includes the base game plus all the expansions. Now this kind of stings a little bit because, again, if Shattered Space was great, I'd be out here going like, oh my god, what a deal, because you're getting all of this DLC for like the original base game price. But because I didn't like Shattered Space much, I'm like, you guys should probably still get the standard edition and see how you feel about it. And so speaking of pricing, let's get into Terran Armada, which again is $10. What did I learn about this one? Well, again, Bethesda told us this was a smaller story DLC, and we already know how short Shattered Space was, but what we saw here was a part where you destroy one of the ships from the inside. And remember how we did that in the old Star Wars Battlefront games? Like you'd fly your X-Wing into like an enemy starship, park it in there, fight through all the engineers. You get to the back and you find like all these core parts of the ship and blow them all up, and that's how you'd win the fight. So it reminded me a little bit of that. And speaking of Star Wars, the Terran Armada themselves are obviously very inspired by the battle droids, the separatists, because you basically have humans leading a robot army here. This DLC does add new guns. We saw a couple of those. And also you can obtain the Terran Armada ships. But one of the other bigger new features here in Starfield's Terran Armada is legendary modifiers for enemies. So we saw a couple of examples here, like Tricky, which an enemy has a chance to just avoid damage that they're taking, as well as Martyr, which is when this figure dies, it'll affect all the nearby enemies and put them into a state of rage. Otherwise, Bethesda's official description they gave me is that Terran Armada introduces a new quest line across the settled systems with new characters, locations, enemies, quests, systems, and rewards. Players get the chance to shape the future of humanity in space as they combat the incursions of the Terran Armada's robotic forces in this brand new story DLC. So that's it. I think the best thing I can say about it is that it's priced way better than Shattered Space, which we know what happened with the $30 Shattered Space expansion versus $30 Phantom Liberty, so I'd rather them go low and slow here and hopefully over deliver. But what was here looked fine enough, and as a Star Wars fan, I like the Star Wars callbacks here, so color me interested, but you're not getting here like another big Shattered Space style expansion. This is a story DLC. Bethesda did say they want to pick at the Starfield lore more in the future, so it's possible they're trying out a new format here where they're going to ship you little $10 to $15 bits of DLC and incrementally build it, maybe more frequent drops perhaps. That would be kind of nice to see instead of like big expansions, and go from there. And I think that could be an interesting path forward if they choose to take it. But the bulk of this conversation is going to be about the Free Lanes update, which Bethesda coins it as the biggest update yet. So there were small things that they highlighted, like adding an additional FOV level for when you're flying around space, to really the big feature of this update here, which is the cruise mode. Cruise lets you go up to 4 different speeds and lets you boost around an entire star system. So think of Starfield and how it's broken up, right? You load into a star system, and remember you'd have to open your map or like look at one of the planets and lock onto them, and it would just be a bunch of loading screens. Now think of it like Mass Effect 2. Remember you have that galaxy map and you could kind of zip around the local star system? You basically have that. That is not saying though that this is open space No Man's Sky where you can go from star system to star system with no loading screens. But when you're within that star system and you have a bunch of planets around you, you can eventually fly to those. Once you lock onto a planet and start flying to it within the star system, Bethesda has added little things that pop up in between traveling to planets in what's called anomalies. Now, the term that Tim Lamb used to describe this was, quote, a radiantly appearing event. So yeah, the thing that you know Starfield for. This is why I said that you are getting more content and you can see Bethesda spent time on it. But as you'll see as we go deeper and deeper into this information, you're seeing radiant, radiant, radiant. It continues to be a lot of that. So if you didn't care about that, fine. But for those who did have a big issue with that, you're getting more of that here. This radiant event between the two planets was just some wreckage. It was just some space loot. And from there, they popped back into cruise mode. And they talked about magnetism a lot during this mode, where it hones you in on the anomalies or the planets. So it doesn't sound like once you pick a planet and start flying to it, that it's entirely like free space wandering. But what is pretty cool is that you can lock onto your destination, say a planet, and then you can get up and walk around your ship. This again felt very Star Wars to me. So you can go and talk to your companions while you're traveling from point A to point B. So there is a level of, again, additional immersive quality here in Starfield, reducing those loading screens and allowing you to just kill two birds with one stone here. I'm traveling to this planet over here. I'm going to go talk to Andreja, and then you can build on your ship. And also on your compass on the bottom corner of the screen, you can actually see when you're getting closer to that star system. So I did like that little addition there. But just to be perfectly clear here, I'd rather overemphasize the point and be a little more annoying than just undersupport the information I'm giving, is this isn't eliminating a ton of loading screens for Starfield. Like when you leave the planet and go into the star system, you're still loading into that. But when you're in that star system, you can kind of freely travel around a bit more like you've seen in some mods. It's no longer like, I think Alana Pierce put up that video where she just like flew toward a planet for like 8 hours. Like you can actually go there now. And so I do think that is a decent improvement. After this, Bethesda introduced a new resource that is at the core of a lot of Starfield's later game loot grind. It's called X-Tech, and they said that this is going to appear around dungeons and within boss chests. So this will allow you to customize your weapons further. You'll make things like upgrade modules, and you'll upgrade the attributes for, say, your gun, of which you can only do one at a time, like a recoil upgrade, rate of fire, damage, that sort of thing. And then you can attach legendary ranks to your weapons. So you'll use a combination of X-Tech and credits to let you roll for a legendary modifier, and you'll get something like Bloodthirsty on your weapon. Now when you shoot an enemy, you'll get some health back while dealing damage. Eventually, you'll get to a rank 2 legendary, and that effect will increase. And then you can apply this to all of your equipment, so you can upgrade your armor in a similar manner as well. Now let's say you're rolling for this legendary rank, like an extended magazine, and that's what you want. After 5 rolls of this legendary rank, if you don't get what you want, you can then just pick whatever that legendary rank is. So before I go further, this might sound familiar, and yes, this is just a Maddie pet peeve, if you want to call it that. I don't like Fallout 76's gameplay loop because I don't play Fallout for the looter shooter grind, and that's sort of what you're getting here with Starfield. A lot of the ideas that I found were being added into Starfield were kind of just ripped straight from 76 here. Like what I'm reading off of my notes here, I may as well have just summarized to many of you as the purveyor. You know, you grind for that gun you really want, and then you re-roll those legendary ranks, you get all those passive effects on your weapon, and you fall in love with it, and that's your weapon forevermore. This can be nice because at the end of some of these Radiant dungeons, you're going to get some X-Tech, and it does feed into a more controllable loop, so I can find that more enjoyable for the players who like to live in Starfield. But for players like me, this is kind of nice for the gameplay loop, but it's not really what I'm there for with Starfield. I'm there for the awesome lore, the really interesting factions. I'm there for that sort of stuff and exploration. Particularly, you've heard me talk about handcrafted exploration, not in just the locations, but the loot you find. So when Bethesda's answer beyond some of the new weapons was just this new resource that lets you roll for things, I'm like, that's, again, what I've said since Fallout 4, not really what I'm here for. They're also adding new weapon skins. Ship customization is getting a bit of an upgrade here. You'll get schematics that you can attach as parts on your ship. So you'll get things like a repair system overdrive or EM pulse shielding or evasive stealth drive. And they actually showed what the evasive stealth drive does, and it allows you to go completely invisible while boosting around a star system, which I thought was actually pretty cool, because especially if you kind of gear your difficulty to more difficult star fights, this is something I could see being particularly useful. They also added a ship optimization terminal to your starship, so you can spend X-Tech here as well and get things like 10% less damage from energy weapons, or recharging your weapons 10% faster, boosting less 10% faster, your whole health increased by 10%, just little incremental upgrades. So you'll see here what I'm describing is, again, at the heart of the X-Tech race is you just incrementally upgrading everything. And they do this with another new feature in Quantum Essence, which you can gradually upgrade your Starborn powers for. And Bethesda really went in on how they want you to use Starborn combos for powers. And some of the examples they showed in their B-roll as well as during the presentation, I was like, okay, cool. I like this, because to be honest with you all, I barely touched the Starborn powers, but I like how Skyrim handled the shouts, and I felt like the potential of the Starborn powers was just undercooked, because at least in Skyrim, like, yeah, I love my unrelenting force, my Fus Roda. Like, of course, that's the iconic one. Launching someone off the top of a cliff. Great feeling. But also they had like the sprint, which got you kind of through some of the traps in a dungeon. There were different shouts that like cleared the sky, forced the dragon to land. Like they were more utility based, more applicable. And I like that sort of stuff here. So I'm hoping that these Starborn powers can now be a little bit more useful with something like Quantum Essence, where you can upgrade them, make use of them a little bit more, combo them into more abilities. They do seem a little bit more sandboxy, if you will, where of course we know with Starfield's combat, like the enemy AI isn't the most complex. The enemy variety is really non-existent. So all you can really modify through the difficulty setting is how much damage these guys and gals do to you. So it's not really like a game changer, but some more fun factor there is not something I'm against. But those are the two main resources that you'll be managing here. They did talk a little bit about planet-based exploration and how new POIs have been added here. For example, one of the POIs they showed had a brand new vehicle called the Moon Jumper. When he got in, he showed how you could use the boost on this thing and just like stay in the sky for a while. I thought the name for it was really great, but otherwise, like they didn't really get into that. It was like a 1.5-minute segment of an otherwise hour-plus presentation. So it was that moment of like, all right, kind of wish there was a little bit more here. Again, staying in line with Fallout 76 a bit here, Bethesda put a lot of time into the Outpost mode for Starfield. Some of it is actually pretty cool, but I'll start with the bare basics here. They're adding some new creatures to the Outpost mode that you can get through a quest line, so they can kind of hang out at your little camp. There's 2 texture suites that they're adding. One they described as the Crimson Red Fleet, while the other is a wood panel Atari 2600 look. There is some quality of life that I actually liked. For example, there's prefabs like this elevated cabin that you can just place, and it's got everything in it. So you don't have to place the cabin, place the steps, go through all the air pressurized doors to get in, place your tables, place whatever you need, your crafting, whatever it is. This just comes equipped with everything. And as someone who does not really engage with Starfield's Outpost system, because I never found it particularly interesting or useful, it has not really evolved since Fallout 4, and it doesn't feel like it's in theme with the game, so it's just kind of a their thing. I like that if I have to use this at all, or if I find a reason to use it at all, I can just be the simple dude who puts down a pre-made cabin. So I did find that to be useful quality of life. Easily my favorite update that was added to the Outpost mode was the collectible action figures. I thought this was really cool. Basically, it's Starfield's Vault Boys, and they actually use those bobbleheads as a reference point for this. And also as a collector, I love one little decision they made here. This is the stuff that gets me excited, where I go, see, Starfield's got a lot of potential, because they're doing a sealed and an unsealed version. And I love that the sealed versions, you can look at the back of the box and see the other 27 figures. Like, I think this is such a great addition to the game. And not only do you get a buff upon picking them up, but you can also get play sets for your Outpost, and you can load up these action figures into the playset, and you can play little sounds. I'm like, dude, hell yeah. Like, this is the stuff that lights my fire. Call me stupid, but I love collecting the magazines in Fallout. I love collecting the Vault Boys in Fallout. Like, I love that sort of stuff. It was awesome to see them kind of lean into that a bit here with Starfield. So there is cool stuff like that. Another great quality of life feature is a shared Outpost container. So you put that thing down and it shares a container across all your outposts, so you don't have to go from outpost to outpost to get your stuff. Again, I thought that was great quality of life here. They also added a new player home that is within an asteroid, and I feel like this is a good point to park it and just talk about this for a brief moment here, because Bethesda said they wanted to create an aspirational item, like something that you save up a ton of credits for and you can use it on this thing. And I'm sitting here dreaming for a moment, like, oh, is it like a weapon? Like, you know, is there a cool feature? And it ends up being another player home. And there's already 1 million you can build in Starfield because of all the empty planets. There's a bunch that you can buy, like apartments. Shattered Space ends with giving you a dedicated player home. And then their aspirational item is another player home. And the adoration for this part of any BGS game will just never really make sense to me, because it feels like the game could load it up with cool quests, loot, interesting characters, like other aspirational items. Like, what if a companion was an aspirational item, if you want to describe it like that? But they just make these places that no one really actually, I feel, goes to, because they just show well, they're modder friendly. And if I were to wager a guess, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong on this one, but it feels like they're just easier to make and show than anything I just suggested beforehand. Like, they show in this player home, hey, we've got pool tables, a cappuccino machine, but it's all an idea. It's like a play set. When I was a kid and I got like the McDonald's, remember that? The McDonald's cash register? I love that thing as a kid. And you had all your plastic burgers. It's like, I'm not actually running a McDonald's out of my home, but I'm pretending to. And I just feel like a lot of Bethesda's Outpost systems in 76 and in even Starfield have not evolved a lot since Fallout 4, where it's play time, it's fake time. It's not like actual utility outside of the stuff that was created in Fallout 4, the benches that did things like weapon upgrades, armor upgrades, that sort of stuff. And so I'm not expecting Starfield to evolve that whole system, but it was this moment where I did have that feeling of, again, another player home. And then during the kind of Q&A, when Bethesda was talking about the crafting for Starfield and the Outpost building for Starfield, Tim Lamb did call Starfield kind of like a cozy game. And this sort of reframing of what Starfield is at that point was starting to rub me the wrong way, because I have a good friend in Gene Park who would agree with that sentiment. But I'm like, hey, that wasn't what was sold to us back in 2018. Like, they announced it after 76 because they wanted you to know they're doing a traditional Bethesda single-player RPG. During the marketing of the game, it was like, hey guys, here is our next big RPG, just like our other games, is mentioned a lot of times in all of their marketing speak, just like our other games. Then Todd Howard, I think, had the best reframing of it. Like, it was an experiment, and he unfortunately even had to admit, like, some people can find Starfield incredibly boring, but now we're calling it a cozy game, and it feels like we're trying to Frankenstein this thing into an identity. And so I don't want to just completely drill into this one passing talking point here, but it was something that, as a lifelong Bethesda Game Studios fan, like, genuinely I was a bit upset when I heard it. I was like, we're calling their games cozy games now? And maybe for some people it is. It's not up to me to decide your joy and how you take something out of all of this. It's just, I've never heard Bethesda try to identify their games as that. And Starfield has enough blood and shooting and questing where I'm like, it's the cozy game now? I digress. Let's continue on. They added database menus. This is for the crafting, building, and research. So you can add a tracker, which will basically let you look for things like nickel or iron, and this lets you see what planets it's on. So clicking on that planet will take you straight to that in the star map, so you can find what you're looking for quickly. And this is, again, a lot of good quality life for the Outpost mode. They highlighted with the Unity, so the New Game Plus mode, which for PlayStation players, I will not spoil for you, but basically you can build what's called a quantum entanglement device, and you'll get this quantum essence I was talking about earlier with the Starborn powers by killing Starborns, by destroying their ships, and you'll be able to store items to pass through the Unity, we'll just say here. And the max capacity is 200 items, so if you've been married to that loot you got with all your X-Tech and everything, or you want to bring your money over or whatever, most items you can take over. They didn't say everything, but most items. I imagine it's just key quest items you can't carry over because you'd probably break the game. And then to wrap things up, we did have the Q&A. There weren't a lot of major takeaways that I didn't already bring to your attention now. I think the only things, again, that I want to mention are that they teased more updates are coming to Starfield. Like, there's a lot more lore in the game that they want to tackle. And not only that, but that there is no changes to the onboarding for Starfield. So if you had issues with, say, the introduction of the game and how it started with all of this DLC included, it's still the same introduction. So those of you who are joining us on PS5, for example, will be experiencing the beginning of the game as we did, which I'll just put out a warning. Even for me, I really like Starfield, but the opening few hours are pretty rough, I would say. So in conclusion, what you have here, I think, combined with the free updates and $10 for Terran Armada, it's quite a bit. Maybe not Starfield 2.0 overhaul type big, but I think it's a lot for the lack of asking price or just the price itself. As for the content itself, though, it seems like it's interesting enough for a more recurrent player like me to hop in and check it out. It's not enough to start a new playthrough or connect with the game on a really deep level. To put this into context, during the Q&A, Tim Lamb did get this question, like, should we restart and do a new playthrough for this? And he kind of locked up at it. He's like, oh man, I wish I could experience all of this with all of the updates fresh for the first time, but he didn't really want to suggest people going in and doing a replay. And I gotta say, given that it's been since the end of 2024 with Shattered Space, it kind of sucks that it ends up that way, where it's like, okay, we're trying to scratch and claw our way here. I always said that no matter what happened with Terran Armada and the upcoming Starfield updates, that Bethesda would have their work cut out for them. And I think part of how they're handling things, if I'm guessing correctly, I don't know for sure, is that they are kind of accepting that reality of, like, they cannot do 2.0, but maybe they can get there over time. And I think if that's the way they want to do things so that they can otherwise divert most of their working force to something like Elder Scrolls 6, I get that and I support that. So ultimately, I think a lot of diehards will love this, but for me, the biggest point I do wrestle with in all of this update is that Starfield's going to play a lot like 76. And I think this weird mixture of an endless loot grind with a Frankenstein cozy game just doesn't work well together for me, but it is a lot of people's jam. And so what Bethesda is effectively turning this game more into, compared to where it was at launch, was less of a game for me. So I still want to go in and try it out and see if like I'm just crazy, but it makes me wonder where they're going with their future with things like Elder Scrolls 6. It makes me wonder where they're going with their future for Starfield and what they're prioritizing updates on, because I mean, I try to keep an eye on the community, generally speaking, through the content I create. I read Reddit articles, that sort of stuff. And I know a lot of the community just likes kind of hanging out in space, and maybe these updates do the trick for them, just more things in Starfield. But for me, again, I want to lay my hands on it, but there was a lack of information on a lot of the things that I was most interested in, or evasiveness to it all. So all in all, a lot of content for sure. Not going to downplay that, but I'm definitely left with this kind of unsure feeling about everything. But maybe you feel differently. I'll be eager to read your thoughts down below. Thanks for hanging out. I know this was a longer video, but also, like, I've been sitting on this for so long. I've had thoughts develop for so long. I've been itching to get it all out and give you every bit of information you need. So yeah, here it all is. Let me know what you think down below. Other than that, take excellent care of yourselves, and I'll catch all of you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.